Hello again, this is Rachel May, and I'm going on with my videos, my sound videos for the moment, and very happy to receive your questions and suggestions for areas that I can do channeling and spiritual work and get answers for you. So I have a reading I'm going to do for Sherry Lee, who came up with an interesting question. She has been informed by her guides that she is going to be very instrumental in developing a new lighted money system for the planet. Maybe she's the linchpin or the center of this. It's her mandate. And this is a money system that will come in. I see it when there's a kind of a parting of the ways where the people who, the starseeds and the light workers, the people who are aware, the people who come from the heart, the people who've worked on themselves, go one way, and then the people who are still stuck in the 3D, you could say the mud of 3D existence, they can't really raise their eyes and see the light, they go another way. Because, you know, there will come a time when both cannot continue to live on the same planet. What I see right now is that there is a parting of the ways going on, but it's coming closer to the surface. We are seeing polarization in spite of the chaos. We are seeing increased clarity where it's not, you know, too hard to see where it's at, to the negative and the dark exploitative people. The exploiters are revealing themselves increasingly. The issues are becoming clearer, and for very many people the issues are actually very clear now, and for some of us they probably have been clear for a long time, if not many lifetimes, but particularly now. So then there will be still a money system. I see that coming in as we ascend. Many things will happen at that moment. Of course, the really hard thing to do is get the time chronologically, because chronological time is shrinking. It's losing its power. I mean, yes, the world still runs on it. If you have an appointment at 6 o'clock, you use a clock and you get there at 6 o'clock. But it's having less of a hold on people psychologically. People are feeling more. Many of us are feeling more. And for some of us, time is quite difficult. I mean, I can just about make my appointments. I can make my appointments to work with people individually or to hold a class. The rest of the time, you know, because I live out in the country, it's a very long time since I was in the workaday world. You know, I often don't really know what day it is because I don't need to. I don't really have to put my mind there most of the time. But, I have to make sure that I show up to meet you guys when there's an arrangement, and so far I've managed that quite well. I've managed it. So anyway, there will be a money system. There will be banks in this new. Is it the new Earth or is it the interim to the new Earth? Okay, they're saying it's the new Earth, but it resembles the old Earth in some ways. There will be more profound changes that will come in gradually as you decide to bring them in. You are the masters of this new reality. We don't know how long it's going to take for this to really start to happen, that cutoff point for the old world, because there are going to be a lot of changes in the world you're in now. There are going to be a lot of changes very soon. And we don't really know how that's going to affect the mass of humanity. The effect will be beneficial. People will lighten up. People will start to see more positive signs about the future. But there is a lot of clearing out of the old to happen. So in other words, people have lost their houses, some people have lost their cars, some people are living on the street who really don't deserve to be. The food chain is pretty toxic. There will be clearing up to do, but as we've said to you many times before, there will be many hands making light work, and the clear up itself can actually be done rather fast. However, these are all changes that happen in a sequence of events and in time, and then even more tricky to project the timing on is the internal changes that you'll go through. So many of you are living in a very good place inside yourselves. You are still processing for the planet, so you definitely do have your off days. It's not, in most cases, your own karma or your own stuff, but it does seem to have to be cleared through somebody, is what this medium has always said. And I may not have mentioned I'm a conscious channel, so my voice doesn't change, but most of the information is coming from a higher dimension, from master guides and so on. So, or from my soul, my own higher self. The timing I'm getting at the moment, could be between 18 months to 2.5 years. However, while I'm sticking my neck out to say that, I'm going to ask you not to hold me to it, because everything on that level is kind of becoming increasingly fluid. So things can happen very fast, or they can happen seemingly slowly. We know things have been changing a lot, but yet for some of us who've been in this field for a long time, earlier on, going back 20, 30, 35 years, Spirit was actually telling us that the change would happen faster than it has happened. And when certain master guides through other channels have been asked, why has it taken so long, they say, well, we didn't know, how much these other side, the Team Dark, would, how nasty they would be, how, what they would have up their sleeve. So I feel a little bit cynical there, because I always want to say, well, I wish you'd asked me. Nobody asked me. I can tell you what these people are capable of. However, that's not how it came down, and where we should actually already be there by now, we aren't quite yet. But as I was noticing in Cheryl Lee's reading earlier, and I often do notice things like that, there is a kind of moment of pretty mass ascension. It's not so radical. Many of us now have 98% or 99% of our light body downloaded. We hold back on the last fraction, because once that last fraction of light body is in, your light amplifies so much that if thousands, or maybe well over 1 million, or however many people are now very close to their final ascension, if they do it, when they do it, it will blow those slower people off the planet, and we haven't got to the moment of the closing of the door. And again, I'm getting the record keeper, the angel that's the keeper of records, closes the door between us and the people who are not able to ascend at this time. And at that point, they will fade from our reality. They will be taken to another 3D planet. And it is another planet where they can, be helped and catch up. And in some cases, they may catch up rather quickly and be able to come back into the new earth ascended. In other cases, no, they have other paths. But at first, they may not notice that they are somewhere else. It's that similar to what they're used to. And their own view of the world is actually quite limited compared to ours. They don't see that much. They don't feel that much. They feel oppressed. They feel depressed. Many of them feel quite hopeless. Some of them are still doing twisted tricks as they think they need to survive. So they're not all in states of total honesty and so on. But basically, these are people who are getting another chance. At that moment, it's so pie in the sky. I have to say that. And then someone was asking me, when will I be with my twin flame? And the fact is that there are some people who are living with their twin flame on Earth now. There are some people who are married. It's a small percentage of those that met their twin. But while it is said, and I've been shown, when in the moment of your final ascension, your twin has to be there. You ascend with your twin. That doesn't mean that some people will not meet their twin in the interim period. It can happen. The thing to realize is that your higher self is actually running the show. And while some are impatient to meet their twin at this time, the bigger you is in control of it. So if they aren't there, and very often, it's the woman that wants to meet the twin and the man is the twin. Sometimes it's the other way around. I know of a case where it's the other way around, that people I know quite well. So the man really, really, really wanted to find his twin. He wasn't very well adjusted, in terms of his inner male-female balance. So he would be in relationships with people who were definitely not the twin to me, as I did readings for him. However, he would be, is she my twin? Is she my twin? And I would say, being tactful, because you want to be truthful, but you want to be tactful, especially in these kind of areas where people are quite sort of emotionally vulnerable, where I don't see her being the one you end up with, knowing that she was actually quite crazy or something. But he did meet his twin, and then he actually didn't have the ability to cope with it because it was so powerful. However, I do believe they're together now and married. It just was probably a bumpy ride for a while they sorted out the relationship. So people who are married to their twin flame on this planet, are quite rare. But if you look, you'll probably be able to find somebody, even if it's only online. They exist. And the ones who do live together, they're often teaching twin flame relationships because there are other people coming along. So you could meet your twin before your final ascension in the physical body. And as was coming through earlier on today, and I do think that I've seen this before, it's kind of tricky because a soul can have aspects on the planet in various bodies. And the various bodies can run different aspects of the soul. They can carry varying amounts of light. And in some cases, that person may have a download where they get so much soul that they can then meet and be with their twin, or they can start working towards it. So they, in other words, they will be doing some growing. Some of those aspects of the oversoul, or the larger soul, the body would not be able to run that much light, so they're not going to download the twin essence and be with the other twin who's in embodiment. And then in some cases, the twin will show up around the time of the final ascension into the light. And the closer we get to it, the more I see that it's actually somewhat down to earth. And I've seen people, who've been in that space. I've worked with people who've been in that space. They're not 100% ascended, but psychologically and emotionally and spiritually, spiritually we're there anyway, but psychologically and emotionally, they go through a phase of being so extremely lighted that what they want just comes to them rather easily. They're full of purpose. Their health, is either very good or it improves very rapidly. They do sometimes have a tendency to rejuvenate. There is a bit of a tendency to rejuvenate. It just depends, how strong it is. Sometimes it's stronger, sometimes it's less strong. But it's there, and sometimes the person can't maintain in that space because it brings up more things that have to be sorted out, more density to be cleared and so on. They kind of temporarily lose that enlightened space, however it happens. But they're saying what makes it so hard to predict this moment, the parting of the ways, and then I don't see everyone in the world ascending at the same moment, everyone who's left on Earth. I see, like someone might ascend on Tuesday and somebody else might ascend on Thursday, and a whole bunch of people might ascend at the weekend. But basically, it would be like, all the quails in the desert are hatching now, but they don't all hatch at the same moment. Or the salmon are spawning, but this doesn't all happen for each fish at the same moment, and for the babies to hatch at the same moment. It doesn't all happen at the same moment, but it's a block of time where everyone on the planet will be very lighted. And again, I don't know how long it will take for everyone to go through that door, that ascension portal, but I don't think it's very long. It's just like we were the baby quail coming out of the eggs. Some are still hatching, some are yet to hatch. Some are quite grown up. This is what's happening around me with birds. So it's, I see it as being very similar in a way. The thing I also see is there's difficulty of seeing quite a lot about this because it's very different than what's happening now. Now, it's happening inside people. The animals are very aware of it. They know it's going to happen. All the animals know it's going to happen. Of course, the planet and the plants and so on know. And to most intents and purposes, they're already there. I mean, yes, when this moment comes, the planet will change on the surface quite a bit. How much, I don't know, because I in my readings and so on, I see pockets where it changes a lot. Like today, I saw an underground stream in a place that's very high energy, suddenly being on the surface with a waterfall. And the environment looking quite different, looking quite heavenly, where right now it's just a very nice backyard. It's just very different, but I just get pockets of information about how this will look. At that time, everything won't change completely, where increasingly people will manifest, their needs will manifest in front of them. Again, I'm not really seeing that overnight. There is a money system for a while, and the money system is a bridge between the old way where everything had to be paid for and everything had a price. And some people could find the price for the things they wanted, and some people can't always. Most people have a house, they have a mortgage. They're mortgaged up to the eyeballs in many cases. So they're not really free. The house isn't really theirs because if they don't get the dollars, if they're not bringing in the bucks, the bank can take the house away. So there's a great deal of uncertainty and insecurity. Then I see a positive money flow. It's different. It's like the banks start to transform, the buildings start to transform. I think some of the tellers would be the same. You go to your bank and there's a lady or a gentleman that you have usually done business with, you've probably known for several years, you talk to, although I know most of it's online, I do see there still being some banks that people walk into. So just to stick with the building banks for a minute, that person, if that teller, is someone you have a good connection with, very likely, well, they would be ascending too. There would be less people in the bank because everyone in the bank has to be able to ascend, so they have to be a star seed or a light worker. with a lot of light body. And for a while, I mean, they also have a higher self agreement to help transition the money system till we get to the point we don't need the money. But the money itself at that point seems a lot more fluid. It's a lot more to do with what you are creating and your needs. So if you need a large sum of money, it's more like the teller looks at your bank account and the money is there, or the money isn't there yet, but you get a feeling it's going to be there next week. And maybe you go away and talk to your guides or your higher self, or you meditate on creating abundance. And then when you go to the bank, the money is there. And yet, weirdly enough, it all seems quite official. And here and there, I've heard of this happening already. You know, I've heard of people who find more money in their bank account, or somebody finds a few $100 in a drawer that wasn't there before. So the energy of instant manifestation is around, and some people are doing it. And they're saying in the next stage of our lives, we will, from now on, as we go on, especially when there's a very strong change in the external world and in the system, that starts to free up a lot of people because they see things moving in a good direction, and there will be more things appearing and disappearing. It's happened to me. I don't know how much. Sometimes I'm aware of it. You know, something gets moved. Something's not where I put it, but it's somewhere else. Sometimes there's more money than I expected. Sometimes there's a bit less. But those changes will start to happen more. So the incidence of sort of mysterious appearances and disappearances in the world, that's going to be increasing quite a lot in the coming months. And again, looking into the new earth, I'm not doing it from the perspective of being there or receiving information from someone who's just come back from there, come back from the future. I do a bit of time travel, but I'm more looking at in terms at the moment I'm being shown visions. And the visions that I'm getting right now, they're not all that total. They're impressions. They're impressionistic. You know, so I see the bank, it's different. It would be like if you died and went to the astral plane and you had good karma, so it's kind of a happy hunting ground. It's more like that. It seems like everyone's working together to give you the money that you would like for something you want to do. So when you talk to someone who works in the bank about, I'm looking for this X amount of money, it's like their will as well as yours is involved in the creation of the money. And now again, I'm hearing tokens. You know, the money is just tokens. Money is tokens. They're like keys that release energy. It's just tokens. They're tokens, which is what money is. But seems like everyone's more aware that they're tokens. And then because I've done it this way, you know, for quite a lot of lifetimes, for a little while, it's psychologically easier. It flows better if I still do it this way. So I will go buy a house on a piece of land that I've seen that I want, and I will give someone money for the house. I see it's like, you know, because we've been dealing with things this way for a long time, a substantial amount of people who are in this ascension process, either close to their final ascension, or they may have done their final ascension. But a substantial amount of people are still thinking that way. They're still thinking about buying things. So they're not thinking about a nest egg for a rainy day, because there really isn't much fear left on the planet. But it's like if somebody's selling a house and you want that house, and that somebody is thinking in terms of being given money for that house, then you go and you find the money and you give them the money for that house. And then from that vantage point, how it's going to move forward, at the moment that kind of gets a bit silly for me. It's like, because if it's hard to tell what the coming changes in the coming months are going to do to people or for people psychologically, it's harder to step into that new earth and see what the new earth is going to do for people psychologically. How they're going to take it, how fast they're going to learn, how quickly everyone's going to realize that they can just create things by believing they're there. So the sense is that will take a while to catch on. Although some people are quite adept at it, very few people think of a nice red sports car and it appears in front of them. It happens. But there always have been people who are, very powerful at manifesting. And I've met people. I knew someone once who could have diamonds and emeralds and rubies. She said they were quite small ones, but they would appear on the mantelpiece. And in some ways, she wasn't even a person who was in very high integrity. She was quite powerful. But she would have these precious jewels appear in her house. It would happen at times. But like she said, they were small ones. I mean, they wouldn't be worth a huge amount of money because they were little. But it did happen. I believe her when she said that, because I always see those rubies and emeralds when I think of that. And some people are, they can manifest a house very quickly, or they can manifest a lover very quickly, or a vacation. Some people can manifest fast. And they are, extremely positive people. They are more positive than most of us. They are in a very positive space. They believe that they're lucky. They believe in their good fortune, and they get it. And some people do get it quite fast. And whatever the reason, it doesn't necessarily mean they're better than you or I. And sometimes I have manifested things fast myself, but other times it hasn't been all that fast. It does depend on your mindset. And but what they are is they're here to demonstrate that. There are beings who've taken an earth life who are very powerful at manifesting. And, their biggest purpose in this life may be to demonstrate that, to open doorways, to free up channels. So it's easier for other people to do that. And they may, very likely they do have, what you could call good karma. They don't have much to pay off, or maybe they just kept that power through many lifetimes, but in fact they have issues and they will have some things that they have to sort out. We have to be in integrity, because until we are, things come up. And that doesn't only mean being a good person. It means being integrated. It means our male and female sides being integrated. It means being in balance. So it's really a path of self-healing, being healed. Until one has healed one's sort of most glaring issues. Let's put it that way, because I've seen ascended masters having issues. They don't have karma that slams into them, but they've had problems too from their issues, from things they haven't integrated perfectly. But, it takes a high degree of integration for us to all go through that ascension doorway. However, that's just the way it's happening. There have been people who've been very badly integrated, who've ascended just because they are starseeds, and there are a lot of forces that facilitate their full ascension, but they can actually have their breakdown after they've ascended with the stuff that they can't deal with, because, if they're carrying slow energy still, on any level, then they're actually moving very fast, and they can get caught up with the slow energy until they sorted it out. So we don't really have a way to escape from what I call our process. However, with this money, the money itself seems rather fluid. As I say, it seems to me to be a manifestation of the continued belief in the money system. However, it all has to be set up. So in other words, it doesn't just magically appear that we've got magic money, although we will have magic money. Somebody actually has to figure out how to make that happen. They always do. Somebody had to figure out how to make this planet happen. And, a lot of us were involved, very many of us. Somebody had to figure out how to turn energy into matter and make the material universe. And again, there is someone who was, what can I say, again, the linchpin for that. But there were many of us who worked with that being, who has recently had a life as Einstein. How did he know more about the nature of matter and energy and the transformation from one into the other than other people? Because he actually was working with the equations that allowed a material universe to be created out of pure energy. That's how he knew. And quite a lot of people idolize Einstein, and my sense, because he's a very bright light to me, and I've had connections with him during this lifetime, is that though many of those would have been the souls that worked with him to help create this universe, they know, there's something powerful and very lighted there. And so he's very important to them somewhere in their scheme of things. But most of even those people are not necessarily reading the Akashic records and remembering what happened, but then I'm quite sure I'm not the only one who does. But anyway, back to the money. Somebody has to create it, and Sherry Lee seems to be very involved in that process. What she is doing is downloading from her soul group and others who are very lighted masters. She's actually downloading instructions for this money system, because though it's more fluid, it still is a material thing. When we're in the fifth dimension or on the edge of it, we are solid. We're solid to each other. We can hug each other. We can play musical instruments. We can have various mediums of exchange. For example, if you like to paint, you could still do paintings. I mean, you could do the thing that computer graphics is really doing, where you can make a painting appear. You could see a design and then send it onto the canvas, but that's the joy of making images, but it's not the joy of painting. So many of us would still paint, many would still make music. In fact, we see those things being more enhanced because the serious work takes up much less time. So, unless you're one of those people who already supports yourself by your art or something like that, the majority of people that do art, they like to do it, but they actually often need to have some income from some kind of a day job as well. I'll try and see for you, Shirley, how you will be working on this. Definitely you're getting downloads, and so some of it will occur like you get out of bed in the morning and you have a whole new piece of the puzzle there. You are able to see this money system more clearly. And when I got to see it, I got that seeing it is key. In other words, it will, because it is also a very quick manifestation thing, it's not like you have to build a mint and mint coin and print notes. It's more like you see it and it appears. Much more like that. And with the design of, say, these coins, or however the form of the money is in, where I am seeing coins, whether they're actual or symbolic, I'm seeing like gold coins, is the feeling is they would be designed more on the astral plane. But again, that would be a bit fluid. So lots of people might get coins with the same design on, and then a new design starts to appear. Or there might be different people in different places who have different designs on their currency. But I'm feeling like there is an interchange between people in the physical and people up there in the higher dimensions. And so people in the physical body could be designing the coins too. But the other feeling I get is they're more really created up there, just as, you know, if you build a house or a compound or get a car, first of all, it is in the astral plane. And the designer, the builder, whoever is connecting with that design, you know, everything in this world is designed in a higher dimension. And the beauty of the object or the system depends in how, partly or quite a lot, in how clear a channel is channeling this. You know, so you get clothes designers and you get wonderful clothes, and then you get others who are quite well known or very successful, and their clothes look kind of idiotic and ridiculous. But they're being artists, and they're channeling something about the zeitgeist. They're channeling something about what's going on. It's not that you would put on these weird garments and walk down the street. It's the artistic side of the person. You know, I mean, some of them might be bad designs, but some of them are not bad designs. The artistic side of the designer is kind of taking over, and they're making a comment on society in some way. Right now, you know, all those systems are quite adulterated, but it's still happening, where you get, you know, someone who, although there aren't really any new clothes designs, you know, someone designs something that's so good that it becomes a perennial, like the, you know, the shirtwaist type of dress. You know, it never really goes out of fashion. It might look a little old-fashioned because everyone wore them 40 or 60 years ago or 80 years ago. But basically, you know, there still is that kind of design with the tight bodice and the flowing skirt. It's comfortable, and it's flattering to quite a lot of figures. So it never really goes away. The same with fabric designs. You know, the best textile designs keep being repeated, like William Morris, if you know him, who was an English designer, but he did these all gorgeous flower fabrics. Now, most of them were for curtains, you know, they were furnishing fabrics, wallpaper, but it never goes away because the designs are so magnificent that people, you know, they keep coming back, and there's always somebody producing them. So this seems a bit more ethereal. It's like the bank teller hands you some money, or you get money out of the ATM, or you wake up in the morning and there's some money appeared on your dresser overnight. And sometimes it would be completely new designs. Then the guides are saying they might have fun with you in that way. Also, you might have money on you, and it was one design when you put it away, and it's another design next time you look at it. But however, even though this is so ethereal that I can't describe very well how it occurs, it still has to be figured out. Even though we go into the next level and it's much more magical and much more lighted and doesn't really have anything in it that's unpleasant. The only thing I've been able to get so far that, slows you down a bit is figuring something out. You have to figure out how to do something. Or if you want to make a house, you first have to design the house. You might be able to just manifest the house, or you might have a replicator that is your midway thing, that you tell the replicator what you want, you put the picture into the replicator, and then the house appears. However, you have to really think about what kind of environment you want to live in. Or because things will be more fluid, if you make a mistake or something doesn't suit you, you can change the design once the house exists. But, in terms of energy saving and being able to accomplish more in your life and not being pulled down by things, you would probably start thinking about and visualizing what you want to start with. You may make changes later, or you may not. You may love that house, and then it might be for somebody else. I sometimes see like a fairy house in the woods with, not deep in the woods, it's not dark, it's more like saplings with sunlight hitting the ground and mosses, and the beams holding the house up are more like Art Nouveau with beautiful parabolic curves. And changing the color is easy. You might make a house with blue beams and white walls. I'm actually describing one I saw on Facebook. It's a beautiful house, but I haven't really been thinking that much about what house I want to live in when I can live in any house I choose. But that was one that came kind of close. It's a fairy house. It's got a windy staircase and sort of curvy walls and curvy bay windows and a beautiful wooden floor. And it's sort of a great mixture of influences. It's sort of medieval, it's fairy, it's Art Nouveau. It's very, very good design. And it is actually how someone else designed, but it's come quite close to one of the houses I would like to live in. I saw another, the first time I thought about it, a palace made of rose quartz, with walkways where the horses could come into the house, and a singing tower. There's no reason why your house can't sing. A singing tower with round rooms that you could go in, and you could probably program the music, and there would be little bluebirds flying in and out. I don't think about those kind of things so much these days because it's not quite the reality I'm dealing with at the moment. And I'm sure when the time comes, the ideas will come too. But we can have all of those and more. This is on the way to that, and it strikes me with Shirley's money plan, with your money plan, Shirley, that although it's said to be a short interim period between the money we have now and not needing money at all, it feels like it's a transactional tool. It could go on for quite some time because it helps people very much to negotiate their way into a completely free system. Now, we know that the people, which many of us are also in the fifth dimension, the people from the fifth dimension currently living in spaceships for the most part, our soul group, we are also in those spaceships as starseeds, all of us who are already starseeds. They do age, but they age very slowly. They have healing platforms. You know, every 5 years they go lie on a healing platform for a short time, and the energy removes the previous 5 years of stress from the body. So the fifth dimension, you know, it has some relationship to this dimension. I don't know if that's every variety of extraterrestrial does that, or if it's just some. They're saying it's just some, but in the fifth dimension there is a degree of entropy. It's very small. You know, that's what breaks the body down. Entropy, it means wear and tear. It's very small, but there is still a degree of entropy. That's why I saw a man who was a mechanic for the Air Force on Earth, and now he's gone back to his soul group on the spaceship. He's actually a kind of mechanic for their spaceships, for this soul group of beings. But the mechanics are different. You know, it's more to do with creating with your mind. But, you know, he came here and did mechanics, and he was very good at it because in the higher dimensions, he understands that principle of manifesting and creation. So, you know, on Earth it's been nuts and bolts in your hands so far. Well, at least for about 1 million years. Before that we did have instant manifestation, but up there it would be more like, okay, we can have this kind of computer, and he starts to manifest it within the spaceship. We want to do some work with people on Earth, and we need this kind of system to channel this kind of energy to these particular people. Then it starts to manifest. But he's making it. He's that kind of mechanic. He's a manifesting mechanic there, very much so. See, manifesting by fixing engines or building engines on Earth, it's the same thing, it's just very much slower and ultimately less efficient. We have a lot of entropy here, so nuts come unscrewed, and, you know, rubber perishes and so on. Metal gets fatigue. But it is the same principle from the top end of creation to the bottom end, lower end of creation, where we currently are. So the process of going into this next dimension, which is a pretty, you know, okay, it's the fifth dimension, but compared to this, it's very high because, you know, people don't die in the fifth dimension. You don't have diseases, but one of the reasons you don't have diseases is because you're so tuned in. You know, we only get disease in the body here because we lose our connection to our higher self. We have too much integration to do, and we go out of balance. You know, we haven't got to the space where we can maintain the physical body in perfect youth and health. That's where we're going. At one point, they were doing it in the land of Pan a long time ago. There wasn't disease, aging, and death when spirit first came on this planet, but the body was a bit less fixed and more fluid than it is now. But disease, aging, and death came on the planet later. It always does, seem to, apparently. So this interim, what I get psychologically with the money, it really helps people to adapt. You know, it will fade as people realize it's not needed, but there are too many changes to make psychologically when you ascend, or just before you ascend, when you're ascending, that you don't want everything to be completely different. You know, different people adapt at different speeds, but everyone has an optimum speed of adaptation. We're used to being in the natural world, you know, with its seasons and a certain lifespans and growing seasons for our food and preparation time for the food and eating time for the food. Now, your diets will change, but still, you may sit down with friends and drink your fruit drink that energizes you. We'll be more on that kind of level. And we know some people do live very much on that level now, a few. There are even people on the planet who don't eat. And there's a family in South America, and I watched a video of them talking, and they're really amazing. I mean, they were having babies. They had a baby, and they weren't eating. And the woman might have eaten occasionally when she was pregnant, but I seem to remember she didn't. The baby, she fed the baby the normal way. But they were not eating, and their health was superb. So they were demonstrating something. They're here to demonstrate where we're going, and in many cases where we actually came from. That living on light, living on energy, you do have to be out in the sunlight a lot. It's not something you can force, if you're ready for it. But for most people that go in, and it's also higher than the fifth dimension. I mean, people in the fifth dimension live on light, but they can actually have anything they want to eat, So they can manifest any kind of food that they feel like manifesting for the enjoyment of eating that food. And in some instances, for the recharging it does for the physical body, which you are actually physical in the fifth dimension, but as I say, it's really without the crap. It's without the garbage. So the money is very helpful to people psychologically, and they gradually over time become more adept at creating more money, but it's very much in balance with the heart. So, there are still parts of Africa that need more irrigation, and we need a quick irrigation system. We need hands on deck for this. So some of the people who would like to work on that, they still have the idea of money, so there's money to pay them for the work. And, the work happens rather quickly, so maybe it's 3 hours a day or something. And then they can go out, and there are certain theaters where people collect money. They're still in that mindset. So it has a lot to do with the mindset. And I suspect, although I've been seeing these things for a large part of my life, and I have that kind of mind with very few frontiers. I can imagine, I have good imagination, I guess you could say. Like, I can imagine completely different realities. And there probably are realities that I've lived in at some point, or am living in some dimension. But I can imagine worlds where things are extremely different. But a lot of my life has been spent doing that. Many, many people who are on this path, who are going to inherit the earth, who are ascending, some of them may have actually started to get aware of these kind of things 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I've encountered people who started to get aware of these kind of things like 3 years ago. So they haven't literally had the time to work through all these systems and figuring out if these systems are necessary and what part they play in our life and what part they need to play, or if they're needed at all. It takes time. And of course, I'm quite elderly now. Well, I'm getting on. You're as young as you feel, and I don't feel old. There's no oldness in my personality. I still resonate very strongly with the young. Freedom of thought and so on. But I've had a lot of time to think about things and consider things and to try different lifestyles and to experience. I've experienced a lot of different lifestyles, poverty, relative wealth. I've never been extremely wealthy, but, comfortable. All different kinds of experiences, and I've been quite engaged, I think. There are definitely times when I've been asleep on the job, no doubt about it. I'm not this genius that's always firing on all cylinders, but just seeing, trying to understand people, the psyche, how people function in different situations. You know, like a very wealthy person who's always been wealthy. How does that affect their psychology? I've lived with people like that. I know how it affects the psychology. And some of those people are quite different than most of us. You know, they might be reptilian, but others are not. They might have good karma, or they might be there to learn certain lessons. But they have a different psychology because the money's always been there. And then for the majority of people, the money has to be worked for. And yet, you know, even among quite humble folk, you get people who are consistent winners. They win, you know, whether it's betting on a horse or whether it's a lottery. And some of those people get the big wins. Now, they are kind of unspoiled people, probably from Lemuria, or they're nature spirits who've taken a human body, because the nature spirits manifest everything. You know, they're close to another dimensional way of processing about money, about wealth, about fortune. They're what people call lucky, and very many people who win big win more than once. They have a certain attitude. It's interesting. It's worth studying their psychology. But there's money until, you know, until you go to the theatre, or you go to the store, or you go to the box office, or you go, and there's no checkout. Like, you can just walk out with your stuff. And you know, the person thinks, oh, that's interesting. They go to another store the next day, and again, there's no checkout. They just walk out with the stuff. But that, you know, for people who believe you get stuff from stores, which will go on for a while, somebody has to put the stuff into the stores. You know, and now I'm seeing like organic market gardens. You know, maybe some of us like the experience of gardening. Someone who's loved gardening all their life, why would they stop just because they're now fully empowered and fully conscious? They may find that they're getting much better results with their plants, and that the plants are sort of growing faster, and all kinds of things are happening. But they still want to work with the soil, and we still have soil. In fact, we have better and cleaner soil and more of it. But, you know, it's like the little children's storybooks where the flowers have faces and they talk. You know, the flowers start talking to me. I mean, I've already had flowers talk to me, and I'm sure lots of you have too. So how long the money will be needed, but it is to do with people's psychology, and someone has to plan how it's going to work. So Shirley, you seem to be the central figure in that. It's still a system like any other. It's just a system that's quite an advance on the one we have now. I'm going to stop now. I do personal sessions. If you would like one, please let me know. Please like my video, and I'd love you to subscribe to my channel. If you subscribe to my channel, you will see all my videos. They'll come up in your feed, and this is just the beginning of the journey. So I thank you all, and I love you all. Thanks so much for listening. Until we meet again, God bless.